Matt, good morning and good afternoon here from in the UK to all of our attendees. Thank you for joining us. It's great to see so many of you coming in with us today. We're live on air here from across the world. I'm sitting here, although my background says I'm in London, that is factually incorrect. I'm in Scotland here in the United Kingdom, joined today by Matthew Berg, our VP of Product and our IT Solutions Suite. Matt, I've been at Lightspeed 3.5 years. This is the first time that our overlords are letting you and I be in a room together to talk about this stuff. I think it's quite dangerous, but I'm really looking
That's,
forward to it.
yeah, me too. I don't know if they have time for this, but I'm certainly excited to do it. To your point, it's been a few years actually of us talking about finally getting together. So glad it's happening.
So Matt and I would frequently, just as in the general, part of my role is to look after our international markets and the growth that we have there. There's lots of interesting filter challenges that we come across that are just a little bit different sometimes. So Matt and I spend a lot of time talking about how we can innovate and change our products a little bit to suit all of the international markets that we serve. So quite often it's a very geeky conversation, which I love. Today, we're going to try and deliver a mixture of that to make sure that we're digging deep into some of the technical aspects of our solutions and how we see some of the challenges that are there for filtering as we see them in 2026. We are going to keep it a bit high level as well. So generally the flow, Matt, if you're good with it, I'm going to kind of talk about those challenges, put up the skittles, and then it's your job to knock them down with some of the technical answers and just how we're kind of seeing the world today. Does that sound okay?
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. And of course, there is some audience participation as we go through. It's got two forms for you today. If you're joining this webinar, we are going to have the Q&A option, and those questions is open throughout. So if you'd like to ask either Matt or myself a question, we will attempt as we come to the end to be able to answer those. Or we've got various points where we're going to just push a pause on Matt and I speaking, and we've got a few polls and questions. It's always good for this to be at least a little bit of a two-way dialogue between those of you who are joining. Normally, when I host a UK or an international webinar, I recognize lots of the participants. I see a few familiar faces, but it's great that we've got such an audience across the globe today, including so many of our US customers as well, who not my normal person that I'm speaking with. So it's nice to be reaching out a little bit wider than usual. With that being said, we're going to make a start, and I'm going to get our presentation here ready to go, so that we can kind of share this with you and we can illustrate our conversation a little bit. As I said, my name's Colin McCabe. I look after our international markets. You've already been introduced to Matt Berg, looking after our IT solution suite. We're really talking about some really particular parts of filtering is the goal today. We're going to see how these topics are reshaping filtering. We really do see that there is a shift happening. We're seeing that some more of the nuanced functionality is really starting to make a real difference for our customers and how they're supporting their schools. And of course, what that impact has for students, for teachers, for administrators across our districts, municipalities, and the regions that we serve. And it wouldn't be Lightspeed without us trying to support you with some of the best practices that we're seeing from our customers, that we're seeing from schools across the world. With that being said, we're going to dive straight into the first one, and it's a huge one. It probably should be no surprise that there's going to be a section dedicated for us to talk about cybersecurity. When we think about cybersecurity, we know there are many, many facets. On the Lightspeed side, there is a certain percentage that we really support there, and we're going to start certainly from the content filtering side. There's lots of challenges with filtering in general. You can see some of them here, and it's getting increasingly hard to be able to control this environment where students are using the internet. Maybe that's VPNs, maybe it's proxies, maybe it's just that the type of content that's being consumed by our students is no longer quite as clean cut as the website that needs to be visited. Here I'm thinking about the documents that are being generated inside productivity suites or the prompts and the content being created by generative AI tools. And of course, this is leading to an increased amount of risks. Some of the statistics on this particular slide are really, really scary. And we have gone, I believe, in the last number of years, particularly across 2025, of a belief that this was happening elsewhere in the corporate sphere to this is something that really is happening inside our education bubble amongst K-12 school districts, amongst municipalities and regions that we have across the world, even at the sort of Department for Education level in certain countries, are seeing the challenges that cyber attacks can bring, and they're bringing them to their educational doors, not just into corporate networks. And largely what we're finding by, all of the time we spend reading about where these are coming from, one of the largest threat vectors, for want of a better phrase, and it comes from the fact that we've got so many students using the internet, and that risk is incredibly large with so many students that have not free access to the internet, but free will to use the internet within the guardrails that we have. This is why our filtering systems need to ensure that they're not just protecting from the harmful content on the internet that we already know about, but that the brand new content that is being created. So I've made a big statement there. I feel that schools are forcing and seeing more and more that there are cybersecurity incidents happening. I'm perfectly expecting to this poll that a few of you will, many of you may say no, but again, I'm also expecting quite a few yeses, and I'm seeing you already engaging, and we have got a much larger number than I was expecting. We're seeing it as people keep answering. We're seeing it just slowly tick towards that at about 60% saying yes. Matt, that's probably a larger percentage than I was expecting. You notice I teed it up there to expect one or two, but we're really living and breathing what we're seeing here with it's landed on a 50-50 split. Would you have thought that, Matt, or was that a little bit unusual for you?
Actually, I would say I'm probably not actually that surprised, and part of it is because I think what can constitute a cybersecurity incident is also just so varied, right? I think a lot of people outside looking in, they think of a cybersecurity incident and they're probably just thinking of ransomware, right? Which, that's obviously really not a good one. But also, you had actually on the previous slide, how compromised sites. It's like we think about people getting their credentials stolen or phished. We think about even just like getting malware on a specific device and what that can mean, because some of those things like to traverse networks. And so really, I think that when it comes down to things that actually create an incident of some form, it can be, um, even though it can feel like isolated or small, it has a significant impact and has repercussions. So yeah, it's unfortunate to see it so high.
100%. And yeah, I appreciate the clarification. You're helping me think about it. I'm thinking about these large scale things that we hear about in the news, but this is happening day in, day out on a
Yep.
smaller scale. It's still causing trouble for administrators. It's still causing challenges for our individual students who are living them through this. So we want to be able to support with levels at all levels, just the big hitters, the ransomware ones, like that Matt says, but throughout all of those potential cybersecurity incidents. I've touched a little bit on what the negative aspects on here, but I wanted to just land on one particular sentence around the idea that it's really hard to sort of challenge and to stop what you can't see. Certainly in advance, it's very hard to be able to identify that. The other negative aspects are, I guess, nearly self-explanatory, but I wanted to double click on that one in particular. We think about how we filter the internet today. We think about there being a category database of URLs that we've processed. And yeah, from Lightspeed side, we think we do a really pretty stand-up job of that. We invest a lot of time and are really proud of how we categorize that. But something that's only been generated in the moment is something that is a challenge that we need to be able to address, and we need to be able to support. Matt, I think that really aligns with the idea of us having those multiple layers. Prerequisite, of course, we do need that category. We do need that support to be able to categorize it, and we need to be able to secure it on the device with like our agent technology as well. But some things further up here we wouldn't have seen on a slide in 2024 or 2025 in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah. Let's talk through that. I mean, I think one of the things you said earlier, I do want to just kind of go back to for a moment about, having students with free will, using the internet. That is something that makes it so different from enterprise because unlike enterprise, where somebody can maybe get, written up or even ultimately let go, or otherwise if they're not following content policies, it's a very different process when you're dealing with a bunch of users, millions, across the globe, that are actively trying to get around that filtering solution. They're trying to, in a way, expose themselves to these risks, whether they realize it or not. And then, of course, that's where all of this challenge starts to balloon, and that's where things like, it being faster than ever to create those tools starts to become a cascading problem as we sort of go into 2026. Now, really, we've thought about this a lot. Your points about, categorization, I think are spot on. It's a very effective system, and we do, I think, on Lightspeed side, a great job. But it is starting to demand more than that, though you still need that backbone there, right? Fundamentally, when we think about creating a consistent experience for educators, that's why categorization is powerful. When you have things globally categorized, you ensure that everybody gets exactly what's expected, but we need more, right? And so Lightspeed's approach, we use agents, the agent model, and part of the reason we really like this is that it goes with the device, right? Where we're making sure that not only are we getting the maximum visibility, but we're also getting that consistent experience and consistent reporting anywhere the device goes, while still being a bit more invisible when it comes to latency, bandwidth, things like that. And it lets us also do some cool extra things. And again, and I know others out there use agents too. Hopefully, they're doing similar things, which is to say, being able to make them tamper resistant, right? Because you have, like, especially on Windows, you have a lot of extra access that you can provide. So between that and then, of course, obviously the categorization we talked about, another big one is zero-day threat protection. And I'm actually going to mention the fish tank and the integrations here. There's a lot of great resources out there that are provided even for free for various companies to integrate with, to be able to help them keep up and effectively work as part of your cybersecurity suite for actually mitigating, downloads of malware or instances of clicking into phishing, right? I think, whether using Mimecast or some other email filtering tool, there's a lot out there. Um, there is still always that risk that something gets through, somebody clicks something they shouldn't, and having a content filter that's going to block that request is a very important thing. And knowing that the new sites and all these things being created at least same day are getting categorized effectively is also important as well. And then there's that last layer, and you touched on this one. I think you're very correct. It is more recent, and it's because we are seeing that proliferation of new content, whether it's AI driven or otherwise, or sites like Google sites becoming more adopted. We're seeing a greater and greater need to have the ability to read and understand and take action moment to moment, regardless of if something is categorized yet, because it adds that extra safeguard, right? It's another layer that you need, and it can help mitigate significantly any sort of whack-a-mole effect or otherwise that you might be feeling, which I know a lot of people are feeling every day now, trying to keep up.
It's a
Excuse me.
real challenge, Matt. I feel that we've just came back from Bet, the largest sort of show that we have, and it's that whack-a-mole. You've just sort of spring back a few memories of conversations on the trade booth show, the trade floor, where that's exactly what people are living with, and that's time that they want to get back to do other things as well. I'm hopeful that you're going to give us a few little sneak peeks, perhaps here into what we're going to do to try and
Absolutely.
help some of these layers. If you can engineer us, I know that's the case because I'm going to click next on the slide, and that's what you're going to see. I hope so. Sorry for the theater.
You can see the future. It's excellent.
Yeah, imagine.
Yeah. So the first one here, and I think this is probably the most topical, is the real-time proxy detection and blocking. This is something, if you've been paying attention to the market, you'll know we're not the first ones to do it. A lot of these technologies are really, really exciting, but one of the things that we've been seeing, and this happened with image blurring as well, is that the initial effect, when especially if you're using artificial intelligence or things like that to try to let's call it kind of what it is, on the fly content categorization, on the device with some local Chromebook capable model, right? There's a huge false positive problem. Even the best ones out there, we're seeing stats like even the most modern, recently released, are around like in the 75-ish% accuracy. And that sounds decent, but then you think about, okay, well that means what, 25% of false positives? Like that's a scary thing. And so we did obviously with our image blurring, we released that with the ability to turn it off for specific categories because we know that there's times and places that's going to be disruptive. And of course, when you combine that with our custom categorization, that gives you a little bit more granular control there as well. But the real-time proxy one is interesting because one of the big challenges that we're seeing is kids doing things like creating legitimate looking education sites, getting them into education, and then turning them into proxies. And then what happens then is that if you've turned off proxy detection on your education categories to prevent false positives, it's kind of starts to defeat the point. And so the direction that we tried to go with this is that rather than doing like AI based on the fly content categorization or text classification. I know there's been some recent conversation in the market about that. Is we're trying to look for the actual signals in the JavaScript and in the page setup, right? You think about when you initialize a proxy in a browser in a web page, there are different headers and different elements and things that have to be set up and configured for that to work just intrinsically. And so we're trying to look for those signs, right? And that way our goal is to be able to not only be very effective at stopping the proxies, but really try to cut down that false positive rate. So that way it's something that you can have on always. So it's a pretty exciting thing. It's something we're working on. I can say it's coming soon. I can't give a full date because we're still tuning it and implementing it as we go. But I will say that we have definitely it is something we're very excited to get out there as soon as we can. And it's been pretty cool to see in action.
I seen a quick demo of it. I think it's really cool. And I think I just want to, as we move to the next one, just underscore one point there as we flow through. So a website that has already been categorized by our significant database as being a potential cybersecurity threat, great, it's gone. It's not going to be visible at all. But the nature of the internet changing so much means that, as you said, legitimate websites might be acting for a while to get through the categorization, then make a change. And suddenly we have this real time option. To your 75% point, I've heard that time and time again about things loading up differently. If we're already removing that categorization layer for the majority of content, it means it's 75, or with our models, much higher than that, of already a fairly small percentage of browsing, which is going to really increase that accuracy that the student is experiencing. And I think that is critical when we want to give the experience to the teachers to be confident in the material that they're going to share with their class. So
Yep,
I'm really
absolutely.
excited by it. I've seen it in action. It's pretty instant. It's absolutely just it's a flick of the page. It's you're not even loading the content. Once it catches that thing in the header, down it comes. Loving it. Can't wait to see that one coming out, Matt.
Yeah, same.
And you
And
touched
then
on image blurring already.
yeah. So this one is interesting. I said it's kind of it's related but a little less related, and the reason why is that it's not always the result of somebody trying to bypass the filter that they run into this type of content, and in fact, it's in general it's not. But I touched on in that process about how being able to access educational content safely is an important thing, and when we're thinking about the impact of things like false positives or otherwise, and so um we did this with our image blurring, like I mentioned, with the category control. But one of the things that we wanted to do was also to take that same technology, that same power, and bring it to video as well. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's that we're the only ones doing that. I think you really need to make sure though that when you're looking at really any solution, that you're understanding how it's going to be comprehensive. And something like video blurring, what we're doing here is it means that in combination with smart play, which is something that Lightspeed offers, which is already categorizing videos, it gives you that extra safety net, right? You know that now if there is an extra video that is being allowed, you want to add, want to open access a little bit more broadly to give your teachers more flexibility. You now also can have confidence knowing that inappropriate content at a frame level is not going to be shown to them, right? So we're actually looking at and scanning the frames of the video as it plays, and then making sure that we are obfuscating or blurring that content out mid video while the video plays. And so it's again, it might seem maybe a little less exciting than the proxy one, but I would say that the argument here for this type of technology really is that when we're thinking about the whack-a-mole, it's not just proxies. It's also adding videos to allow lists. It's also trying to balance, okay, Wikipedia has this type of content on it, but our parents want it, or our teachers, sorry, want it for this. And so, obviously these are pretty obvious examples, but I think it really illustrates how this type of technology can keep you out of the weeds and let you relax a little bit. So that way, everyone has a better experience and you're not sitting there entering things into lists all day long.
And you say it might sound obvious around the Wikipedia one, but still, that is a discussion that's going on in administrators' offices across the
It's true.
globe, still where they have this angst of such an educational resource and making it available, or not, because there is a risky 1% of user-generated content that could change, or just general, like the image example in our slide deck here of the human reproductive system has a perfect basis for certain students at certain times, but not necessarily
Yeah.
for all of our students. And getting that level of granularity is requires the specificity to be able to look beyond what a URL will be across the website that it's on and starting to look at this. I'm going to come
Yeah.
back because this is the first time I'm hearing that it's frame by frame, Matt. That sounds awesome. So,
Yeah.
really it is going to be that instantaneous and all of that's not that it's streaming away. That's going to be a local and very fast decision that's being made.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's built on the same technology again that the image blurring is when it comes to the AI model that's scanning. And so we're essentially able to just grab each frame on the fly and run it through. Fortunately, for those of you who are familiar with how some of these image scanning systems how they work, they don't actually require that high of a resolution. And so it allows us to sort of keep the performance implications to a minimum, right? You're not really having to deal with issues there because what we're actually streaming to it is like the lowest resolution version of the video, right? So it's not trying to make a decision on a multi-megabyte high definition video frame. It's a much more efficient technology than that.
And I'm going to hark back to one of our geeky discussions because we talked about this in terms of how we test our solutions. You know, it's not as if we know that students are all sitting there with high-powered Windows machines and MacBook Pros in their classes. We test these on some of the most entry-level Chromebook devices on purpose, don't we, to make sure that this is going to work and function at that level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even my Chromebooks, it's a 2019 that I use it on. So, it's not the newest model, that's for sure. But even on something like that, it feels invisible, which is obviously that's what we're aiming for. And and I will say to that point, it is also built in a way with queuing and things like that that is specifically designed to make sure that it cannot try to process too much at once and slow you down, right? It will always prioritize like content that's above the fold, and then of course will work its way down from there. If you've used the image blurring, then you understand how that's working, etc. So yeah, but it's a very very similarly designed.
I love it. Thank you. And
Absolutely.
everyone can see why I love geeking out with Matt. It's so good. He has in-depth knowledge of how all of these things work. And I know when you're thinking about how you're protecting your students in your environment, you want to have as much detail and as much confidence as possible. And I've yet to meet anyone with as much confidence building technique as Matt has here with his deep knowledge of all of the functions that we've got. But Matt, that's enough praise for you for now. Let's
Thank you.
talk a little bit about how we're sort of reporting this.
Well, actually, really quickly, I will say one last thing there too. The Wikipedia one's a good example, but the other one that's actually really interesting that a lot of people forget about even is just Google Safe Search. I think it's really easy to think that because Safe Search is turned on, that means you're not going to come across inappropriate content, but that's not at all the case, right? When you think about examples, whether it's kids searching for bikinis or who knows what it might be, there's all sorts of things that don't pass the cut from what Safe Search is trying to do, which is explicit content. And so that's again another place where this type of technology can just make day to day, even if it's not changing your allow or block strategies, it can just make your day to day safer. But please, 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 I say this with the most love and appreciation for the feature of that's possible. understand that there will be categories and places that you will want to turn blurring off, right? There is a reality, right? Again, regardless of the extra tuning and the things that we've done to try to improve that process, right? Understand that it's going to take a little bit of tuning. You can change your thresholds, whether or not you want it to be at a strict level versus more normal or relaxed for how it's doing its detection. But kind of just go into it, knowing you'll need to get some of those dials figured out right, so you're not creating any disruption. So, but with that said, moving on to security insights. So obviously we've been talking a lot about various, whether it's bypass attempts or issues with potential malware downloads or otherwise. One of the things that we have all this rich information. If you've ever clicked around in Lightspeed's web activity log, and I know other providers have their own kind of versions of things. Raw information is great. You can do whatever you want to do with it. That's fantastic. But a lot of you don't have time to sit there and agonize over those details and put that kind of stuff together. And so we started to put together this security insights dashboard, and we had a couple of things that we wanted to do. The first one was at a high level, surface what actually is going on. Even if we're blocking stuff, that's great. But even knowing that the computer, the device, the student, whoever was making those requests is important, right? If you're seeing spikes in requests to phishing sites or malware sites, that's an indicator that an email got through that shouldn't have, right? Potentially a phishing links. That's an indicator that maybe a device got compromised, and so it's phoning home a bunch and it's causing these types of issues. And so, and of course, on the allows side, maybe that's intentional. Maybe you have some staff policies or even like just privilege policies that allow people to go to whatever they want. You still should know what's happening, right? And so that's what this insight dashboard provides, is that high level view. But then we need to create connection so that way you can take action, right? Because I think that's what a lot of dashboards miss. Even, I'll say even some of our own that we've created in the past have had that same challenge. And so, what you'll notice with ours is when you click into them, you then get that detail view. You then see the users. And that's a really important thing for making sure that we can bridge the gap between seeing the problem and then being able to address the problem. And so, you'll see a couple different views here. I know the screenshots are small, but you'll see the trend charts over time where you can look at it by sort of security category, and then you'll even see an activity breakdown where you actually can see the top threats as far as like visits to different host names to see if there's similarities, but also who the top users or devices are. So that way you know who you might need to track down or check in on or otherwise, in case something did get compromised. So again, it's simple, but it's meant to just be really easy, digestible, usable, and then actionable at the end of the day.
Simple by design in that side, Matt, as you say, because I always say, and I love how clickable Lightspeed is, that we deliver a higher level statistic, but it's that drilling down that comes there. Once you've figured out that there's something you need to go and investigate, a click, you can tend to be able to dig deeper into that other levels, which is where you start to really get into the meat of what you're there to search for. But it's great
Yep.
to see some new visuals coming out for these things. We're always wanting to look at the information that we gather about what students are browsing with in different ways. And I think
Yeah,
this does a great job of visualizing that, and giving you greater granularity into the cybersecurity side.
absolutely.
Okay, we're putting everyone back on the spot. We've touched on a couple of bypass challenges there, be it from the real-time generation of content or from video use and things. But I wonder just what you're seeing today. We touched on VPNs as challenging aspects. We know that most of you working across the schools that you serve have got mixed device environments, and you've got different platforms to think about in there. So there's a whole range. I'm not 100% sure if you're allowed, you have to pick one. I guess it's the most work. So yeah, we're going to force you to pick one, not all of them, which you might have been able to do. And I would say, just looking as the answers are coming in, there's one clear standout one that we've been touching on today. I'll give people just a second to respond in case I'm wrong, but I think it's pretty clear, Matt, that proxies and those domain sharing sites are really challenging. I think back to
Yep.
whenever I was a Lightspeed customer. For those who weren't aware before joining, I spend a lot of time on sites.google.com / unblocked games and then whatever number it was there. And it was, I lived the whack-a-mole life. So those sort of domain sharing sites and those ones that are hosted on more generic tools are a real issue alongside everything we've been talking about with proxies.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, I'm glad we're slightly validated there, and I'm very hopeful that what we've shared around the proxies aspect is going to be a real lift for those of you who are already using Lightspeed's filtering tools when they're coming out. And if that's not you, of course, or not you yet, we'll always be delighted to speak to you about how Lightspeed Filter might be able to work with you. If you want to take some other resources around cybersecurity, we do have a resource again here inside the webinar. It should be linked inside the, funnily enough, the resources section for you to be able to go and find the how to protect yourself from the K-12, protect your K-12 district, excuse me, from cyber attacks. And it's a whole range of information, some quick tips you can implement, some video resources I can see in there as well that we've used and recorded, a whole range of things in there for you to have a little look at. That being said, we're moving along. Matt, I don't think we're doing too badly for time. I say that some of our colleagues were a little bit worried that we would talk for quite a long time, but we're doing pretty
It's
well
not
so
over
far.
yet.
Not
It's not
over
over
yet.
yet.
Okay, okay. Well, I think we'll be okay. That being said, possibly one of the hottest topics going. I presented a couple of keynote presentations at the Bet Show last year about where safeguarding and safety meet AI, and it's such a challenging landscape right now that we have around
Yeah.
that
Oh yeah.
growth. I'm going to teach a few of you things that you already know around AI in a second, but we'll kick it off again, just bringing the polls back around AI here and the sort of challenges that you have. Some of the options that you've got here in the poll are around limited visibility, or is compliance an issue to make sure that the data privacy models of the vendors that you're picking are issues, or is it we do have that AI is not a major concern right now. Without revealing individual results, it's fair to say that there's not many people who have selected that one quite yet, because lots of people are.
Oh, we got one.
We got one person who's seeing that across that, which I guess is it's the reality of life that we are seeing all sorts. We want to make sure we can put that back up on their radar, likely within 2026. Who knows where it'll go? But we're seeing a range of ones there. A lot of people choosing limited visibility into what students are using as a
Yeah.
real challenge, and also that compliance piece as being the two largest options for everyone's benefit. As I said, I'm going to teach you a few things that you already know, maybe with some statistics here around this. Um, Newsflash, our students are using AI. Whether we have it allowed in our school network or not, they're using it at home. They're using it for advice. Maybe the topic more of a safety webinar where we're focusing on that side, but they are using it for companionship and a whole load of aspects to address the mental health challenges that we have across the world today, which is a whole different topic. Um, but it's safe to say that we are really seeing a world in 2026 where AI is everywhere. It's the hottest thing that we're seeing. We are seeing teachers who have got maybe a little bit more loose control across their district or across their technology, being able to just introduce it and are trying it and experimenting. I'm a great one for experimentation, but certainly from a technology standpoint, we know we need to make sure that we are thinking about the safety and the security of what we are putting in place. Some of the statistics on the right there around schools blocking AI. I think if this was a year ago, even we would have seen that at nearly 99%. We are seeing schools opening up a little bit more, but there's still a real hesitation for the biggest challenge, the challenges that you've all just answered in the previous poll. Striking for me is that over a third of the students and the teens who are using AI have experienced something uncomfortable or a risky interaction as they have been testing the boundaries. Maybe that's not in a school network, but it's happening. And we are, to some degree, the guardians over the relationship that these young people are forming with AI. We know parents are an important factor in how we teach. Good digital citizenship is critical here, and we have a part to play on that, I think, as well as schools. So what I'm predicting, Matt, for 2026, I'm predicting that 85% to come down as we see some of the challenges around visibility or compliance go away. We know some of the large language providers and those generative options are starting to have to think more about the security and safety of students. They're making their policies more streamlined to be supportive of education. And also with tools like ourselves, what are the things that we're going to do to be able to enhance that visibility into AI is really going to give schools the confidence to flourish in this innovative space, I think.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think one of the key challenges, I mean it's one of so many. I guess I can't really say it's the key one, is that in the modern workforce, right, being able to use AI is largely becoming expected, especially in certain industries. And so when we think about, schools trying to teach AI literacy and the need to educate young people on AI, um, that I think that's one of the big amplifying problems here, right? Is like they have to make this work and they have to do it fast because that is so important to being able to take that step, right? And having being able to be on the same page as other people who did get that education, entering the job market or just the next stage of their lives in general. And so, whether or not it's picking one specific tool or not, one of the things that we've seen, because I think, really early on, actually, once ChatGPT and things like that started to become popular, we did see a few different kind of like, bespoke custom versions for education or otherwise come out. But the general feedback from the market that I saw was that it's like if it's not the real thing, then teaching them how to use it is not helping, right? It's like, they need to know how the real tools work and how they're going to respond and what's going to happen there. Um, and it's tricky too, of course, because then at the same time, kind of to that 34%, those real tools love to self-reinforce and be positive and say, yes, you did it, yes, you got it right. And there's a lot of those challenges at the same time. So it's like it's almost taking a technology that wasn't mature enough yet, but was becoming prolific everywhere, but it's like you have no choice but to try to figure out how to educate. I mean, obviously that's not for everyone. I don't want to say universally everyone's implementing it in their education plans, but it's a real consideration. That's certainly not a simple answer when you're seeing the risks and the harm and the things that it can do, while at the same time knowing that you have to teach people how to use it potentially. So
It's a conversation, deviating here slightly, which we expect it to happen, but it's a conversation that happens over and over and over in education. We have the what AI is to me, at least, it's the latest powerful potential for innovation in the classroom. It's got the largest opportunity to change how we teach and how students learn, and it comes with risks. I mean, the introduction of the calculator into the class came with risks. It was the latest one. Even if we think back to when YouTube was first starting to have a body of educational content, the risks, and like we called out with restricted mode being either too restrictive or not restrictive enough, it's a risk. There are those challenges, and it's all about how we meet them with the safety and with the assessment we make of those risks and the mitigations that we can put in place to be able to allow our students to use these things safely. So it really has, to the title of this slide, it's really amped up the need for that oversight into this tool because we just cannot ignore it in our classrooms for much longer.
agreed. Well, and this is why this kind of goes into the next slide. Oh, perfectly timed. Is why you need a framework, right? Like it's not just one thing, it's not just one tool or otherwise. When you're trying to implement something like this, for your organization broadly, there's so much to it that you have to figure out from a compliance, from a security, and from an auditability, et cetera. So that's really where the smart AI framework came into play. This was something that Lightspeed developed in partnership with a whole bunch of different organizations out there. And when I say organization, I do mean like districts, et cetera, et cetera. So K-12. And so I'm not going to go through and read everything here on the slide, but ultimately, there's building a framework that keeps kids safe, that governs access right, effectively, that makes sure the usage is appropriate, that makes sure, you have the reporting, you have the monitoring and accountability there, and that, your policies and such are transparent, is becomes like a foundational. You need to cover all these bases realistically if you want to succeed in that rollout, right? And so again, this has been something, it's continuing to evolve, right? Anybody who thinks that they've finished with AI related things is probably kidding themselves because of how quickly this is all changing. So, but covering these bases is very key. You can even see even some cybersecurity influence here, thinking about managed, governing AI by role, age, and purpose, right? We think about least privileged access, things like that. Those types of models, they come into use other places too, and it's really just trying to make sure that that rollout is safe and smart. But if we kind of go up to the next slide, we can take a little bit more look of what it looks like in practice, right?
Hmm.
So just kind of giving some examples. These are pretty high level, but just bear with me here. When we're talking about keeping something safe, right, we are talking about blocking or allowing things, right? You have different policies for different age groups. Not everyone should be able to get to the tool. If we take Lightspeed into as an example here, we have three different AI categories. One of them is generative AI. The answer is not to allow generative AI. That's not what you're doing here. You're not saying, oh, high schoolers can get to everything. Really, what you're saying is you're picking the tool, such as whether it's OpenAI or Copilot or otherwise, and you're saying, okay, we're going to go ahead, pull this one out into its own category, allow just this, and then we're kind of keeping everything else safe and protected, because what you're doing is you're setting your organization, your policies, you're setting any visibility or other tools you're doing, any special contracts with Microsoft or whoever your vendor is, and you're making sure that it's all around one highly visible a solution essentially. So, and then from a managed perspective, I think that's fairly straightforward, right? It's not just policies, but it's also even thinking about on an administrative level who can see we're saying transparent for logs and reports that you can share, but also who can get access to those. Because that's the other, I think, kind of scary reality of AI use, is that it's not just for fun or even for sometimes personal conversations. People do put personal information in there, like really truly personal information. Sometimes it's even HIPAA related information or otherwise too. And so you do have to be careful also, from a visibility perspective, that the role access is correctly managed. And then appropriate, I think, is goes without saying. When we think about how you can help ensure AI use is appropriate, it's you think about generating content. I'm sure everybody here listening has had this problem where deep fakes or something along those lines has gotten shared out and around, right? Where people are trying to do that. And so when we think about real-time image blurring and kind of what we're trying to do there, that helps protect and keep that content appropriate. You can't generate explicit images or otherwise. And I want to be very clear here too. Smart AI framework is not just applying to like a generative AI tool like ChatGPT. That's already putting in protections to protect it against that sort of thing. There are so many other tools out there, right? Local tools or otherwise, that people can use to kind of create inappropriate content that's not restricted. And so that's where these things come into play. So, anyways, again, this is something that is it's really meant to be a framework to help you work with all of your peers and stakeholders involved to make sure that you're covering all your bases as you move forward.
Love it, Matt. Thank you very much. It's a good context of a framework and a framework in practice.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. And I think we're actually in a little bit here, we'll have a link to that as well for folks who want to look more into it. Now, I do want to point out from a visibility perspective, this is something pretty cool that Lightspeed is working on. This is pretty recent, which is our AI prompt capture. So when we're talking about visibility, we're talking about that reporting piece and transparency. Being able to actually look at what kids are typing in and then what those responses are and have a place that you can catalog them. Obviously, data privacy is a concern, access is a whole thing. And so this is something that's for just a kind of our owner level, right? So the highest access within the org, but having an option so that way you have that auditability, because a lot of these vendors don't actually provide it. And so that's something pretty neat. There will be more that will continue to evolve. And then, of course, if you think on our kind of safeguarding side, we already are monitoring and alerting on that sort of thing. So detecting bad behaviors or otherwise that need need following up.
That's an important point, Matt, to say that, yeah, this is a really welcomed feature coming to Lightspeed Filter to be able to see this for our admins who maybe, as you've called out, don't they can't see this inside the tool and itself or the platform, or if they can, it's buried inside an audit log so deep that they're never
Yep.
actually really going to see it. But our alerting solution has already been scanning these since sort of their inception and provides
Yep.
that layer of anything that's typed is being ultimately added to the models that it is scanning for those aspects of self-harm, violence, or explicit or
Exactly.
drugged material. So it's important to this is going to give a real extra layer in that visibility that everyone I've spoken to about it seems very excited for. And
Absolutely.
like before, we've got some enhanced dashboards and some reporting coming as well to give greater visibility too.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just go through this briefly. Leadership dashboard. This is something pretty recent, but it's very, very exciting. It's not just about AI, but it's kind of just that's just one of the points to consider here. It's really a complete picture, right, at a high level of understanding what's going on and how kids are using and browsing the internet and what's happening with your various solutions. So lots of cool information in here. I think seeing it and using it in the context of obviously of our products is the most important thing. But being able to understand screen time usage and high level activities and educational focus, all of those types of things really poignantly and efficiently shown in this dashboard. So a very, very, very cool one.
What I think I love the most about it is that it's actually pulling from multiple Lightspeed solutions into this one
Yep.
place. So where there was information before, it can actually be triangulated together, and it's giving a real basis of
Exactly.
information decision making that I really love. So I'm really excited to get this one out and to get this one in the hands of our school districts.
Absolutely agreed.
You've already called this one out, but in the resources, no, not in the resources section because it's too large, too many images in here. Limitation of our Zoom webinar platform, I'm afraid. We couldn't upload the PDF directly, but you will find a link to be able to download the AI blueprint. It covers off that smart framework again. It also looks at other aspects of AI readiness that you want to make sure you're thinking of. We've certainly been had some really great feedback about the value that it's provided to school districts. We want to make sure that if you want a little bit extra lift, that is there and available. The URL is there for you to click on to take you to download that. The practical guide for K-12 leaders on AI. This takes us to our third and final challenge, perhaps, that we're going to address at least in the webinar. I'm certainly not limiting there to only being three challenges in this sector, Matt, but the aspect of our parents. I've already touched a little bit and talked about schools' responsibility during school hours. Then we have outside of school hours where our young people are at home. They might be using a managed device. They might not be. Either way, education, in my view, is that triangulation between the student, the young person, the school and the teacher, and then the parents. And we already offer our parent portal functionality. I see it as a really important connection to be able to support that managed device when it's at home and give the parent that window in there. Oh, wrong way. And we are always facing the demands and the questions to improve this and give additional layers of information to our parents. And no wonder, because the internet usage at home is becoming trickier to manage. Go figure. It's harder to manage whenever we are um, in school. It's harder for our parents too. And we know that more and more parents are actually engaging in these type of tools. I think it's fair to say, and I'm not going to overshare by saying this, but having deployed Lightspeed's parent portal across a Scottish local authority, its uptake was really rather low 3 or 4 years ago. People didn't necessarily see as much value. Some great work's gone into to up that, but the challenges of the world and the ecosystem that we see, we know that we need to have greater control for our parents, and they want that control. They want to be able to support students outside of the school building, but using the school device, because that is just such a blurred and connected experience that requires management. Not just philosophically requires it or requires it because we think it's a good thing, but actually in more and more countries and indeed states across the US, we're actually seeing it being legislated for as well, that this type of content is being provided.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a tricky one too, because it's not just a factor of, give the parents and guardians everything that they want, right? I mean, I wish it was, right? That would make it really, really easy. But there's a reality that the more information that you give parents and guardians, the more challenges that can surface for your school, right? You think about questioning your filtering policies, or thinking about if they can see every category every website's in, and they disagree, where does that request go, right? That goes then to the school. Who has to support that? And so it really is, I think, a challenging balance where you want to provide really the fundamentals and make sure not just that you're complying, but that you are providing something that's useful, while also not backing yourself into a corner that's going to just mean you're fielding questions and concerns all day long, right? And it's a unfortunately it's a truth that you have to face when you have so many parents and guardians out there with so many different viewpoints and so many different relationships with their how their kids are being educated and involvement levels. So it is something that we take a lot of consideration into, that is for sure. And this actually is kind of, if we think about then how we're trying to improve that, this takes us nicely into something that we are releasing here imminently. Which is a pretty significant update to our parent portal to actually give our parents more. And what that means is more control, right? So we think we're expanding our category list, as well as providing them the ability to block specific sites on demand in case it's not covered in that list. But probably the most importantly is the ability to set schedules. This isn't anything necessarily crazy new. I'm sure, some of you out there have probably heard of this this concept before. But when we think about wanting to make sure that parents are staying engaged, but in a positive way, one of the things that we saw is that having to go in and flip toggles on and off for bedtime every night is not necessarily the best experience. And so schedules are it's a simple concept, but what it does is incredibly effective, which is allows you to just set those repeated actions, right? You can set what access you want at different times of the day. You can have a bedtime, you could have a focus mode time, maybe a dinner time, custom times of whatever you want, allowing you to set time slots, days, etc. And then during each of those, broadly control what access is being enforced when, right? So you can cut out YouTube during homework time, but then you can turn off internet entirely at the end of the day, right? Those kinds of things. And so, um, it's kind of going back to the challenges of how do you do this without creating a lot of questions. It meant that, for example, when we do all this, none of this is turned on by default. Each administrator picks and chooses exactly which features and things you deploy, right? You get to choose exactly what level of involvement is right for your organization. And then on top of that too, on the parent side, we can group categories together rather than having 100 different toggles, right? Of which, is great for an administrator, but maybe not great for a parent or guardian. We can take things that are thematically similar and actually put them together. So that way the consistent feels more intuitive and again, generates fewer questions for the admin. So a lot of thought goes into it, a lot of work goes into it. But if you are interested in rolling out this type of visibility to your parents and guardians, which you probably are, considering the state of things all around us, definitely an exciting one, and is just going to make that much better, adoption better, engagement better, while also minimizing the driving new questions or concerns.
It's great. And it's something we've been asked for a while, and we've debated in some of our sessions as to the categories that we show previously and that we're now going to show. And that's, yeah, it's an increased number, and we've had the pressure to both have more, to have less. That will always continue to be right. So we're having to
Yeah.
sort of aggregate that across the, there are 35,000 schools and the different countries that we serve and support, to try and find the right balance. I
Yeah.
guess, Matt, the right
Def-
balance is there in our ability to give the admin control. They may still
Yep.
only choose to show those four, or they might expose all of them. That's what I like about the way that we've figured this out. Um, our schools, we believe, work very closely in partnership with us. They tell us what things we would like. We aggregate that across all of these different points, allowing us to kind of look at the problem from so many different directions and come out with a solution that really tries to fit and solve for all of them. So I'm excited to see how you guys have you've put this together. I think it's really intuitive, having experienced it and played around with it. I'm excited to get it for my three kids who are all protected, delighted for that they're protected by Lightspeed filter in their school, and it'll give me some extra time back that I'm not logging in to log that schedule at bedtime. So thanks for doing that
Excellent.
and giving
Yeah,
me personally a few minutes back in my
you're
life.
welcome.
There you go. Okay, we're getting towards the end. Thank you for all those people sticking with us. Normally, numbers would drop a little bit as we go through, and people drift off and needing to work on something else. But it's been some really high engagement we've had from what you're doing with the polls, and we can see some of the downloads on the resourcing as well. It's fantastic to see. Thank you. Usually, what that means is that something that we're talking about is resonating. A lot of the topics that we have asked have been the principal answers in your poll responses. These are the issues we're tackling. These are the issues we're talking about every day as we talk about how our solutions fit and work for school districts like yours. The fact that you're attending a Lightspeed webinar means that we probably already, have met or you have some form of contact with Lightspeed. There may be some formal next steps that are already there. There might not. Either way, scan this QR code. It's going to take you to our website. If you have an interest in learning a little bit more, geeking out with Matt, geeking out with me, any of our sales and support teams, our customer success teams are always open for a conversation, whether that's one about how Lightspeed Filter can do this, how it can dovetail with your existing solutions that you already have, how any part of our suite can potentially play a part, because we've been very focused on our filter here, but I'm aware we've got a full suite, which we'll flash up the logos for just as we round it out. Before that, we do have time for a couple of questions, which is the best time because I get to pick them, Matt, and I get to put you under pressure, and you have to
Excellent.
answer them.
Excellent.
So
All right, let's do
I'm
it.
going to take a couple. I apologize in advance that there are quite a few in the Q&A section. Thank you all. We will get you all answers, but not necessarily live on the webinar because I've got people doing the virtual job of breathing down my neck saying, you must get this finished in 4 minutes, Colin. Here goes. First one. It's about the restrictions that we see are around things. And the question is, can we tweak these restrictions separately for each of our schools if you wanted elementaries to be different for high schools, for example?
Yeah, so I mean, it would basically just come down to your policy, right? So when you think about within each given filtering policy, you can create one for different grade levels. You can set them up for different schools. Really, any kind of way you want to organize it. I definitely would recommend trying to keep it semi-efficient, right? So maybe do it by grade level or otherwise. But you'll have the ability within each policy to tune the strictest level, so or the sensitivity level. This would be for your proxy detection, but also for your image blurring, your video blurring. And then, where relevant, also be able to control whether or not they're on or off by each given category as well. So, basically, almost everything when it comes to these types of features, lockouts, etc., happens in a per policy basis. So that way you can kind of create whatever flexibility you need across different locations.
And my 2 cents on top of that, if I add to that answer, which is a resounding yes, is just do be careful that you don't create a complex web
Yes.
of policies here that it may not always be you that's in charge of web filtering for your district. It may need to be passed elsewhere, or even just for your day-to-day management. Build a system that gives you the granularity that you need, but be careful not to go a little bit too far to create a real problem for yourselves. That's always a good idea to make sure as long as you're thinking about it as you're creating those policies, you're probably going to find yourself in a good spot.
Yeah, try to find common factors and consolidate where you can. I would absolutely agree. We've seen many times the desire for perfection for every building. Oh, they don't need this, but they do need this, and now suddenly you have hundreds of unique sets of policy, and it's like unearthing that and trying to claw back from that is a lot of work. And so it's definitely, yeah, approach it with that mindset for sure.
Absolutely. And a big time saver for those of you who are Lightspeed customers on the webinar who maybe have not yet migrated to our version 2 of our new policies engine, where you might have been building a policy over here for one set of your org and a policy over here that is kind of the same, but you've got to update it in two places. The way we've re-engineered those policies will allow you to combine those policies, meaning you're now making changes in just one. So if you've not seen some of the information that we've got about that, definitely reach out to your Lightspeed account manager and your success team there to learn a little more, or there's plenty of resources online that can help to signpost you in the right direction on that one too. Matt, I'm going to finish with one question, which comes back to the kind of basis around categorization. And I know we've sat on this question and we've debated a little bit before, but okay, we've now got real time stuff, so we can do it all real time. Why should we even bother with categories as that layer before?
Yeah.
Why not just rely on the real time stuff?
It's a two part answer. So the first one is that the more sensitive that you make tools, the better you make those AI tools at catching things on the fly, the more false positives you get. You're turning up a strictness level. That means intrinsically you're going to have more challenges. So if you're relying on that to keep you safe, you end up in a situation where you really have no choice but to run it at its strictest level, or else you're going to let a lot of stuff through. That in combination with the issue of the inconsistent experience day to day, class to class, right? Like these are evaluated on the fly. That means, you have a class of students, they're all trying to go to it. Some of them are going to get to it successfully and some aren't, right? Because it's not going to have there's no globally saved result being used. And that literally is what global categorization is. What Lightspeed categorizes in the web, we have far more powerful systems doing far deeper content analysis, right? And then we save it and store that. And so that foundational layer being really, really strong is how you make the educational experience day to day effective and non-disruptive. And it allows you to take these real-time tools and back off that strictness a little bit, because now you're trying to catch the obvious things that pop up that, or maybe it's like a brand new Google site of some kind. Um, so yeah, I'd say like you really need that strong layer more than anything in order to just make sure that you actually have a good experience and you're not spending all day with a new whack-a-mole problem. So
And I'll add from the teacher side to this that, when we think about their use of digital technology in the classroom, it's fair to say that it's increasing, but it always could be better. And if a teacher's experience of trying to go to a certain digital resource is that, I think you said 75% earlier, Matt,
yep.
is that 75% of their students get to the right website, or more critically, 25% don't, vice versa, your teachers are very suddenly going to lose trust in the use of that digital resource to be able to deliver the curricula. And they're going to therefore to pivot. And that is something that will never be reported back to you as administrators across your district, across your organization. It'll just happen subtly. And then your instructional technologists will be scratching their head going, I don't understand. But the reality is that your teacher confidence in the use of technology is multifaceted, absolutely. One of which is this content safe? Is it actually going to work on all of the devices in my students' hands? So having
Right.
that confidence from knowing the category layer adds an awful lot to that particular piece. So that's my answer on that one as well. I did say there's a couple more questions and things there. Apologies if we haven't got round to yours. We will try and make sure we follow up with you with those answers. And we'll, of course, follow up after the webinar to get some feedback on our geeky chat today to see if you find it valuable. I did say that we were spending pretty much all of today talking about Lightspeed Filter as just one of the tools that we support our schools with. We have our classroom management tool to give screen viewing. We have our data analytics tool in Insight. We touched a little bit on Alert around that real-time detection of what students are typing from a concern perspective. Stop It provides anonymous report. Signal gives you a whole load of information about the devices that are being used across your district. And of course, you're configuring those devices with Lightspeed MDM. That's Lightspeed in a nutshell. If the webinar was just that, it would have been very, very short. But instead, we've been together, Matt, now for a full hour. It's gone very quickly for me. Hopefully, it has
Okay.
for you. I hope we get to do it again soon. So I really hope our feedback has been strong so that we can come on and do this again sometime.
Yeah, agreed. And obviously, a pleasure as always, Colin. I know we've talked about this for a lot. So thank you, everyone, very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I hope that you learned some valuable things here and you felt like it was a very useful bit of your time. So thank you.
Thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day with whatever you are doing. Thanks very much for joining us.